So you've heard of people making So you've heard about people talking about making sustainable habit changes, but what does that actually mean? Well, in today's episode of Body Beyond the Scales, I'm going to be running you through the true definition of sustainability, well, in my opinion, and what you need to do to make sure that you're making sustainable change within your life. That is, a change that lasts. So let's get into it. Now, for me, I take the definition of sustainability to be something that I learned when I was about 13. Picture the scene, it's year 8 and we're in geography class. The teacher asks, what's the definition of sustainability? And she's talking about in the sense of climate change. And we came to the conclusion, and this is the definition that I've always worked with throughout my entire geography education, was that sustainability is meeting the needs of the present whilst not compromising the needs of the future. Now, this was spoken about on a population-wide level, but I think the same principle applies to you as an individual. So when we think about sustainability and making sustainable habit change, we need to think to the core, how can you make changes that meet your needs now, but don't compromise your needs in the future? And that's where we get this short and long-term perspective on things. Now, I think the biggest thing that people get wrong about sustainable change is that they think too much in one of those camps. So they think too much about the present and how they feel right now and the actions that they want to take right now. And though they think too much about the future and they end up sacrificing too much and they don't enjoy their life right now. And I think the key thing is that you find balance, which again is another buzzword that we'll come on to in a moment on the definition of what that means. But the thing that we really want to do is get crystal clear on how can we meet your needs now, but also meet your needs in the future and have that, I guess, yin and yang, that push and pull between them to make it fit within your life and make you feel like you're making aligned choices that move you closer towards your goals without you sacrificing your present day. And if that feels all a little bit intangible, let me put it into practice for you. Let's say that you're going out for a meal out with your mum. She's invited you for a meal out and she offers you coffee and a cake. You might end up having that coffee and a cake, but if you do, that means that you'll feel like you're sacrificing your fitness goals, your weight loss goals. That therefore means that then you might feel like you're going off track, and that can lead to a whole host of other behaviours. If we focus too much on the future, we say, nope, we're just not going to go out. We're not going to have the coffee and the cake. We're going to we're going to do something else instead. Or we're not going to see mum. And that's kind of like the one way to think about it. Of course, that's extreme, but that's using that as the future concept. So we're just thinking about the future. I can't do that because I'm on a weight loss journey. If you do that though, chances are you're not meeting your needs in the present. Your mum is someone that you probably enjoy spending time with, or hopefully she is. I know my mum is someone that I enjoy spending time with. But if that's something that you want to do, you're like, I want to be present with that person, then saying, no, I'm not going to go out is not meeting your needs now. It's just meeting your needs in the future. So we want to make sure that we're going in the direction that balances both. On the flip side, if we just say, right, yeah, I'm going to go out for the coffee and the cake, you end up getting a coffee that's like a 400 calorie coffee because it's a frappo mappuccino. I say this, so you can tell I am not a coffee drinker, nor am I a coffee as dessert drinker. But if you then end up having a super high calorie coffee and then you throw in a 500 calorie piece of cake, you could end up somewhere between 500 to 1,000 calories just in coffee and a cake, which therefore might be meeting your needs now in the sense of, well, you got a nice slice of cake and you got to hang out with your mum, but it's not really meeting your needs for the future. So both of these choices are unsustainable choices because they're not meeting that balance. They're not having that yin and yang between the future and the present. So this is really where we ask ourselves the question is, how can we make the changes that you want to make sustainable? How do we make this a change that lasts so that you can meet your needs now, but also meet your needs for the future as well? Now, as a slight side note on this, I think something that's really important to do is figure out what your values are and figure out what's important to you. I mentioned there about spending time with your mum, and spending quality time with people might be one of your values. You might have to spend quality time with your family as something that's a really high priority for you. And for a lot of people, that is something that is a high priority. So we want to make sure that you are aware of the things that are important to you. The more aware you are of stuff like this, the easier it is to make sustainable choices because you know what's important and you know what's not. Because if something's important to you, we know where we need to find that balance. But if something's not important to you and it's just people pleasing, say you don't enjoy hanging out with your mum and actually just going and hanging out with her would be a people pleasing occasion, then you might want to make sure that you're making decisions that align more with what you want, or at least align more with your values, and you go all in on the things that are important to you. And that doesn't say don't see your mum. That just means make sure that you are balancing this in a way that works for you and works for like your goals as well, whilst also not necessarily compromising what you need to do in the present. And if you've not done any work on your values before, I would highly recommend going through just like a 5 to 10 minute quiz. I will put one in the show notes that I've used before and I absolutely love. I always recommend this to people when they're doing values work. But if you can get crystal clear on what your values are, it makes it a lot easier to see why things get in the way and what decisions you're making. And you can use them as a proxy to the decisions that you're making and figuring out if that makes sense. Again, I appreciate that was hypothetical. So one thing that I think is really important when it comes to values is, so for me, one of my values is certainty. And making sure that I feel certain around situations, I know what's going on, is something that feels really important to me. Another one is health. Another one is accountability. So if something compromised for me, certainty, accountability, in the sense, accountability in that sense of being like, I hold myself accountable to quite like a high standard, and the idea that I am like a dependable person, someone can count on me. That is something that's really important to me, and I really value my friendships and my relationships with others when I can like rely on them, and I can like they can hold me accountable, or rather like I can be support for them, but they can also be support for me. So in like that sense, knowing those 3 values, if I started to do something that compromised one of those values, often I'll notice that there's some friction coming up against it. So let's use this as a really easy example from the health perspective. Say I started going on loads of nights out again and I'm going out every night. I would then be compromising my health. And that wouldn't be, one, it wouldn't be meeting my needs now. 2, it wouldn't be meeting my needs in the future. Or rather, it might be meeting my needs now because I might be, say, hanging out with friends. But it might not be meeting my needs in the future because, well, health's important to me. And like actually then that starts to feel conflicting for me. So understanding your values is really, really important. And as I said, I'll put a little quiz in the show notes so that you can find out basically like what your values are, or at least get some ideas of what they are. But you can use your values as a proxy to what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And bringing that back to sustainability, that means that you can really tune in on, is this something that I want to like focus on when I am making sustainable change? Does this align with who I want to be as a person, not just now, but in the future as well? So hopefully that little tangent was useful, but let's bring this conversation back to balance. So what does balance actually mean? How do we find that sweet spot between not compromising your needs right now and not compromising your needs in the future? Well, whenever it comes to making any sort of change, I think we need to ask ourselves is, what changes are we prepared to make? And again, this is where your values come in. You won't want to make changes that don't align with your values. So if we can make changes that make sense within your life, that's what we want to do. But the first question is what are you not prepared to change? For example, you might have Sunday lunch with your family every Sunday, and that is something that is really important to you and you don't want to fundamentally change. Therefore, if I came in and said, right, we've got to scrap Sunday lunch off and you've got to eat chicken, broccoli and rice, yeah, you're not sticking to that because it's not meeting your needs in the present and it's not meeting your needs in the future. Well, it might be meeting your needs in the future because it might help you lose weight. However, it's not sustainable in the long term. And it's not something you're going to stick to. You're going to end up wanting to go back to Sunday lunch because family and spending time with family might be one of your values. And that's something, therefore, that you end up basically being pulled back to. Hence why I hope at this point you can see why this sense of self-awareness is so important. So when it comes to balance, I really want you to think about the first thing is there anything in my routine that I'm not prepared to change? Is there anything that I'm not willing to compromise on? Get crystal clear on that, because that's going to make a difference as to what changes we feasibly can make. On the flip side, I think it's really important to ask yourself the question, what changes are you able to make? What changes do you want to make? What actually for you feels like it's something that's not really serving you within your life and you are prepared to change? You're like, actually, do you know what we could do is making a change in that area of your life? Because those things are going to be things that we want to make sure that we use first, because effectively they're like a wobbly tooth. Like the wobblier it is, the easier it is to pull out and move on. So think about what it is in your life that you want to change, like what is already feeling like it could be changed, what is already feeling like it's on shaky foundations, and we could actually take that out and move it elsewhere or like get rid of it completely. These can often be habits that you are not associating with as being positive, or habits that don't align with your values. These are probably things you're pretty easily going to get rid of. So it might be, for example, smoking or vaping. It might be that you're feeling like actually health has become increasingly important to you as time has gone on, and you know that smoking is something that counters that. It might be drinking alcohol. You know that that is something that counters that. In my health example earlier, if I was going out and drinking alcohol, that's compromising my needs in the future. So therefore, or compromising my health in the future. Therefore, it's not really aligned as a choice. So if you think about, again, those values, think about what it is for you that's kind of on shaky ground right now, the things that you could get rid of and actually you wouldn't be too upset about. So those changes, what are you prepared to change and what are you not prepared to change, can really help you find that balance, because it means that you can work with those things as a basis of what we're going to start working on. Now, what I want you to do is think about your overarching goal and think about these changes that we're talking about making. So let's use with the example of that we're going to stop drinking, or rather we're going to reduce the amount that we are drinking. We're going to have more nights out that are alcohol free. The first big question is, does that move you closer towards your goals? So for example, if you are trying to lose weight, does reducing the amount that you're drinking move you closer towards your goals? Let's say weight loss is the goal. Yes, reducing the amount that you're drinking will help move you closer towards that goal. So is that something that we can start with? If it's already something that you're thinking about, it's something that's already on a bit of a shaky foundation, we know it's not values aligned, we know it's something that we can move on. Now, the little compromise here, it might be that it conflicts with a few of your values. So say, for example, you are wanting to go out drinking and that's where you usually hang out with your friends because you go to the pub garden, then we've really got to ask the question is, how do we make sure that we still keep the bit that we want without compromising the bits that we want to get rid of? So the example here could be that you still go out to the pub garden, but actually you start trying the alcohol-free range of drinks. You start focusing on like diet drinks instead. You drive so that you don't drink as much, or that you don't drink. Hopefully don't drink. But yeah, you be safe on the roads. But really the thing here is that we want to make sure that, one, it is moving you closer towards your goal, but again, it is sustainable. So it's not compromising your needs now, but it's also not compromising your needs in the future. In that example, is not drinking sustainable if we're trying to lose weight? Well, it's not compromising my needs in the future because I am healthier for not drinking. I am better off. My liver is much happier for not drinking. And in the present, I'm still getting to hang out with my friends. I'm still getting to spend that quality time with them, but I'm also not compromising my weight loss goal. Therefore, that is a sustainable behavior change because it's meeting your needs now, but it's also meeting your needs in the future. Are you going to be more likely to stick to that? 100%. It's something that is going to be much easier for you to do because, well, you're already on your way to doing it in your head and it's aligned with the choices that you want to make. The next question that you really want to ask yourself is, are you capable of doing this change? Like, do you have the tools that you need to make this change? Because if you don't feel capable in doing it, you're going to find it hard to make the change and stick to, because you don't feel competent at it. So the question is how do we make you feel better at it? And I think the first bit that we can ask is, what do you feel comfortable doing right now? What could you do? So let's go back to our pub example. I think I'm in the beer garden mood because the sun started coming out. But if we think about we're going out to the pub with the friends. You are usually, what you would do is go and have, let's say, 2 glasses of wine and a beer. Let's call it that. In this scenario, what we're going to do is going to say, right, okay, what do I actually feel capable of doing? Well, I actually feel capable right now of dropping it down to 2 small glasses of wine. All right. Let's start there. Let's start by making that change and let's do what you feel capable doing. Down the line, it might be that you feel capable of making a change where you have just 1 glass of wine and an alcohol-free drink. One thing that I will say actually when it comes to alcohol is you can use, there's 2 different methods that I like to talk about when it comes to like alcohol consumption and reducing your alcohol consumption. First off is the Jesus method, where you have water, wine, because Jesus turned water into wine, or hypothetically, depends on what your religious beliefs are. But In this scenario, what we can do is go for like a alcoholic drink, non-alcoholic drink, alcoholic drink, non-alcoholic drink. You don't have to go for wine, but the Jesus method, you know, we need the wine in there. But yeah, wine is probably not the drink I would recommend anyway. But in this scenario, just having that like interim drink, one, make sure that you stay hydrated, but two, it also makes sure that you've still got a drink in your hand, and three, it means that you are reducing the amount of alcohol that you're having, and you are, because you're spacing it out, you're more likely to make better quality decisions, because you're not going to have had alcohol, your inhibitions are not going to have been reduced, and you're going to make better quality decisions through and through. So in that scenario, we've got the Jesus method. The other method that I would recommend is just replacing those drinks with alcohol-free drinks. So say, for example, rather than having a alcoholic beer, going for a low alcoholic or no alcoholic beer, going for a like non-alcoholic gin, or just going for a fizzy pop. I am so happy in places to get a fizzy pop. Like I'm just like, great, yeah, I'm working towards my hydration at this point. And to be honest, I have noticed that very few people are commenting now whether people drink or not, even if you're not the one that's driven. And I don't know whether that's been I know that there's obviously like a lot of like news coverage at the moment around Gen Z and not being a group of people that drink. I would say that I am at the top end of like Gen Z, low end of millennials. It's a very confusing time if you're trying to identify your generation. But in this sense, I really think about like if the people around me are questioning why I'm not drinking, and they're not quite like, and they're not thinking about like why, like if they're asking personal questions in that sense, and they're not accepting the answer of, well, I don't really want to drink, then actually, are those the kind of people that I would want to hang out with? Are those the kind of people that I would really want to spend like time with? And if you are crystal clear on your values, it's a lot easier to say no to people and also feel confident within that decision. So going back to the point of this question now, do you feel capable of making a change? And I want you to start with something that you feel capable and competent to do. So if you feel competent to say, let's say, use a different example, get to the gym, do you feel like you would feel competent to go to the gym and do a full workout? If not, would you feel competent to go to the gym and spend 15 minutes on the rower or on the bike and just do something? Where do you feel competent right now? And we can always work on just stretching slightly outside of that comfort zone. We don't need to go all the way out of that comfort zone, but we can just stretch outside of that comfort zone a little bit of what you feel like is competent right now, just so that we can build what is competent within your circle. But remember, we don't need to go from 0 to 100. 0 to 100 is not sustainable behavior, because chances are 100 does not meet your needs now. It might just be meeting your needs in the future. And we want to make sure we're meeting the needs for both. And I think the next really important question to ask yourself is, do you actually want to make these changes? If you're making changes that are aligned with you and are aligned with choices that you want for yourself, again, now and in the future, that means that you're way more likely to stick to them. But if you don't want to make these changes, you don't feel like you're making these changes, or you're not making these changes for you, you're making them for another person or for another reason, my argument would be that's not really going to be sustainable. And this all kind of comes down to, if you've ever heard of self-determination theory, there's kind of like 3 facets to it. So one is autonomy, like, are you making this decision for yourself? Are you choosing it? 2, competence, do you feel like good at it? And 3, relatedness, is it related to your goals? Like, is it related to your like values? And hence where these questions have come from, in the sense of like, does it move you closer towards your goals? Which hopefully your goals are something that's important to you. Is it aligned with your values? Is it like something that you're choosing to do? Like, are you happy with these choices that you are making? Are you aligned with making these choices? And 3, is it something that you are like, do you feel like good at it? And I think the final question to ask on this is, are you making changes that you enjoy? Like, are you enjoying it to some capacity? If you're trying to make changes that you don't enjoy, again, you're going to find it really, really hard to stick to. So we want to make it effectively easy and enjoyable. If you can do those 2 things, and values aligned, if we can do that, you're on the path to making sustainable change. And all this might sound like a really long-winded way of figuring it out, and a bit too much of a thought experiment to actually be anything useful. But when we start to think about making change like this, we actually make changes that are aligned with who you want to be, and you're way more likely to stick to it. And this is how we get out of that stop-start cycle, because we're making changes that make sense to us, and they don't need to make sense to anybody else. But again, as long as they're meeting your needs now and they're meeting your needs in the future, we can make changes and stick to them because they are sustainable. Like, they are something that aligns with who you want to be and who you are. So I guess once you've used this like litmus test to figure out if the changes that you're making are actually sustainable, the thing that we want to ask ourselves is, what now? Like, what do we do next? And I think you need to then think about, how do we start putting these things into practice? And how do we do these in a way that feel good within your life? And it's really important that we manage expectations here and we don't go from 0 to 100 and start aiming to do everything perfectly tomorrow. We want to make sure that if we've got like our option in there and we've got a thought of, oh, we're going to stop drinking, for example, what's the next best thing in this scenario? What is the thing that we can do to be at 80% of the way to that decision, to be at 60% of the way to that decision? How can we still make sure that we're making progress towards being that version of yourself that you want to be, without compromising your needs? And the next best thing is just the epitome of that sustainability kind of like aspect of meeting your needs now whilst meeting your needs in the future. But also, I want you to think about, like, if we realistically want to make changes, what changes can we make now that you can stick to? So hopefully throughout this whole episode, you've had thoughts on things of, actually, that's what's important to me. These are the changes that I want to make. You might already be on your way to making some of these changes. But I want you then to ask yourself the question of, am I feeling like these choices are goal aligned? Are they goal aligned? Are they value aligned? Do I feel like I am getting good at them, or at least I feel competent at doing them right now and they are stretching me that little bit? Even if I'm not perfect at them, they're stretching me that little bit. And am I enjoying the changes that I'm making? And are they changes that I actually want to make? Do they align with my needs now and my needs in the future? If the answer is yes, you are far more likely to be making a sustainable change than you are if some of those answers are no. If you feel like some of those answers are no, then just feel like, how can you, don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you can just think about, right, how do I make this more sustainable? How do I make it more goals aligned? How do I make this something that I can manage right now and actually stick to? How can I make this more enjoyable? How can I make it so that this feels like it's more for me? Just by doing this test, this like litmus test of these questions, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to make a decision that you want to do, because you're going to find that compromise. And this isn't about being perfect, and it isn't about setting yourself an arbitrary standard to meet or something that's important to someone else. It's about making decisions that are aligned with you and what you want. And that's what's key. This is about putting you at the center of the decision making. And that is that autonomy aspect of the self-determination theory that we were talking about. So to bring all of this together, sustainability is just making sure that you're meeting your needs right now whilst also meeting your needs in the future, and that you're happy to make those decisions and those choices. If you can make decisions, choices, and build habits that align with all of those things, you are onto a winner. This is what we need in order to make changes that last. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Body Beyond the Scales. If you have, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you in the next episode.